Well, thank you and welcome to the kickoff for the HINF Fall Seminar Series. Welcome to our collaborators with the Institute for Lifelong Aging and Health, who are also joining us today, and other folks from the Faculty of Human and Social Development. So I want to welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Mihail Popescu from the University of Missouri, Columbia. I've known Mihail for quite a while. We won't talk about how many years, but we have worked together on Tiger Place, which is a unique facility, and it's a living facility with technology in place, with smart home technologies. They've also branched out over the years to look at other types of sensing devices that can help older adults age in place. And so I suspect his talk today will be wide-ranging when it comes to the types of technologies, both those in fixed environments, but also those that might go with you. As you could tell, we were having a discussion just a second ago about wearables. But he'll also talk a little bit about what you do with that data when it comes out, because this is also one of the challenges, is that this stuff will generate a lot of data, and understanding what to do with it and how that will help both patients, families, and clinicians make better decisions is an important consideration when we start talking about smart home technologies and wearables and other pervasive health technologies. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over for him to go ahead and get started. And I just want to let you know, Abdul, that your microphone in the classroom is on, so I can hear every time somebody moves. Okay. All right, thanks. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
So it starts with the disclosure. We have some patents on these technologies. We license the technologies to a company. I'm not part of that company. Dr. Scoopy, my collaborator is, and she probably told you about that last year. So where is Columbia, Missouri? Is actually in. There are many Columbias in US, as you know, and probably a few in Canada too. So we're like right here, smack in the middle of Missouri. So I am gonna talk about elderly with chronic conditions, and probably not, that probably every elderly would qualify, since 95% about of them have some chronic conditions. Some of them have multiple chronic conditions, and the idea is that the whole what we want to achieve is actually to have some sort of early recognition of the conditions, and then that will lead to avoiding some hospitalization, and maybe increasing the quality of life, and finally to reduce the cost of healthcare. Also, we actually we explored non-clinical use, where the family could actually monitor the person, and that would be more kind of like for the peace of mind, and they would not get. I mean, they would get the elders, but obviously they might not be able to do anything about them, probably being remote. So the idea is, as Karen said, we use the sensors, but we need to do something with them. So we also use machine learning, and then to transform the sensor data in some useful information for the clinical personnel, and maybe for the family. So I want to put a plug, and then we were talking about this about our team. It is worthwhile to have a team that includes nurses, engineers, social workers, physicians, to actually have to be able to come up with a practical solution. So I didn't put all the pictures. We have a site there where there are all our papers. So most of the stuff here is the papers are there. Also the fact that we were a team, we did this collaborative design, which is kind of a fad, but it really worked. And Now, here comes the what I was saying earlier that we did. For example, we did we consulted elderly, and I'm not sure, Karen, if you were still there when uh, the miss was doing that, but we started by asking the elderly what actually what would they like, and if you read papers and they say, oh, elderly would not accept the camera in their house. Well, I stand them corrected because uh, if you ask them, they say that's fine if you don't see my skin. So that's, there are details that you only can find if you do a collaborative and ask the stakeholders. So, we didn't use the thing where build it and they would use it like people do, the develop stuff in the lab and then they realize that in the real world nobody wants to use it. So, okay, so this is the main idea. The main idea, we have a bunch of sensors, depth sensor, motion sensor. These are kind of our main sensors. And then a clinical decision support system, so based on some machine learning algorithms. So, and I said, you send clinical alerts to nurses, social workers, to family. And I have two question marks here, doctors and the people themselves. The question is, do doctors want to see this? And our answer, and I can tell you that they don't. So also, do people want to see their own stuff? And also, in our experience, younger people do want, they're more curious, but older people do not want to see their stuff. So that's kind of like something that we might discuss afterward. But we might have some paper, we have some papers about this. So just a loose taxonomy of the sensors, wearable and non-wearable. So we have temperature, heart rate, accelerometer, ECG, EEG, BCG, and then the blood pressure is coming up pretty soon. And non-wearable, infrared motion detectors, Doppler radars, depth cameras, infrared cameras, and another classification that I would say is physiological versus behavioral. So basically, if you can, many wearable are physiological, like a glucose monitor, stress level, ECG, ECG, EEG, yeah, and then behavioral, as I would call them, that are mostly non-wearable sensor. So basically, when you use an infrared motion detector, you uh, investigate person's activity. So behavior that is could be linked to various clinical problems. And I also would say during and in between doctor's visits. So you go to the doctor and you get the ECG, X-ray, blood pressure. However, in between the doctor visits, you have a lot of information that could be extracted. Um, and then most wearable and non-wearable sensors above are of this type. And as Gary mentioned, the main difference here is the amount of data. Is one thing to measure something just one day, and another to measure daily, mainly if you use some imaging techniques like that camera. And also you have continuous versus discrete. You could actually have, like in the motion detector cases, they send a signal only if they detect motion. And we developed our own sensor, and that kind of again might be a thing for discussion. Why did you do that? To have access to the raw data. So obviously, you could use in your research the Fitbit, and Fitbit they give you access to a lot of data, but not to actually raw data, which is the accelerometer that they have for and all the sensors they have inside. So now. How do we use the sensors? It's wearable, and that's kind of what in our experience, wearable sensors go easier to active people. Um And also, if you work outside a lot, I mean, if you go outside a lot, and you actually have probably a more range of measurements, heart rate, energy expenditure, muscle strain, various things, ECG, and falls even. But non-wearable actually are we think they're more suitable for elderly that spend a lot of time indoors, and um, and we can do fall detection, fall risk assessment, activity level assessment. And again, Demiris, which used to be in our faculty, now he's UPenn. Um, he proved that he did some focus group with elderly that show that using of uh, cameras, like the elderly prefer non-wearable devices, and they tolerate cameras. Um, so what could we get from the sensor system? Well, we can get some physiological variables like blood glucose, high, the heart rate, and these are easy to deal with algorithmically because we know uh, some values, the threshold values that we can be used to send an alert. So this and then they don't vary that much between person. However, if you look at behavior patterns like amount of activity, walking patterns, sleep patterns, this is actually less known and vary between people. So to actually have alerts based on this is a little more challenging. Um, and again, to how to link the behavior, it's kind of know how to link the physiological variables to illness, but it's a little bit harder to link behavior patterns with illness. And the easiest, the most the only way you can do it is if you actually link the sensor pattern with the EMR uh, records. And we had some we had some projects trying that. So as we mentioned, you have the sensor data, and then you have to use some machine learning. This is the you know there are some challenges here. Uh, Algorithms needs to account for context, and the context meaning the activity of the person, seasonal and weekly changes, um, background changes in health, uh, and need to account for individual behavior. So usually it's pretty hard to actually use uh, data across individuals. Is more uh, our algorithm have a strong longitudinal component. Um, so ground truth is hard to establish. Most machine learning, the most powerful machine learning techniques, they recover ground truth, but it's really difficult to actually go and label images or label signals and the idea of having so many sensors giving you different type of information, then uh, putting them together, the performing data fusion and information fusion is actually uh, is powerful but also difficult. So, for example, obviously, if you detect a fall in the middle of the night, uh, if you don't know anything else, it might be a noise of a cat or. But if you know that the person is not in the bed, then the probability of a fall is higher. So, and another problem difficult when you use uh, mostly non-wearable sensor is the multiple people in the environment. So multiple people I mean, two people in the bed or visitors coming in the apartment. So from this point of view, wearable sensors are a little bit easier to process, but they still have this problem of interpretation that any sensor have. So they need to be linked to the EMR data, to some medical record or some other source of information. So as Karen mentioned, this is our living lab. We used we experiment in the lab, but we actually uh, uh, had grants to uh, deploy it in the real living environment. So it has about 50 apartments, and it was built especially for with putting instrumentation in place. So we had network in each room. It had the amount of power, access to ceiling, and on top of the ceiling. So it was built for actually to be instrumented. And it was in the beginning run by the School of Nursing. Then it was bought by Americare. And what happened with this, that means the EMR changed from a EMR that we built for Tiger Place, which was integrating sensors and uh, clinical data with the EMR that actually is built in Canada, Point Click Care, and many Americare facilities have. So, and as for every nursing home, you have all these instruments that they do every 3 or 6 months, and other assessments that were required by our pilot projects or projects were done. So that and the director of, I mean, everybody in Tiger was very research oriented, and the residents were actually willing to help us to do our pro project. So these are typical of apartment. You have motion sensors right here. You have a depth sensor, usually in the living room, and then a bed sensor in the bed. So these are our main uh, sensors. Obviously, we experiment with other things like radar, sound sensors, access sensors, temperature. Um, so, uh, and again, I'm reiterating here that if you start a project like this, start with a focus group with the target population. So, gate and fall detection using depth sensor. So, what's the depth sensor? Was initially was Kinect. The company that we work with, they developed their own depth sensor. So I'm not getting into the detail. That depth sensor has projects a grid, an infrared grid on the in the image, and then it reads with a laser, so you can tell if the grid has any deformations, then they transform that into depth, roughly. So the idea is that depth image is based on infrared is good, because that means it can see the dark, so we can use it during the night. So why gait? Gait is actually the most. If you measure anything about elderly, gait is the one thing you wanna measure. And apparently, gait and the grip strength would be the next one, the another one. But gait is actually the most informative, as you know, it reflects many health changes uh, that could happen. So we actually didn't get a little bit in processing. Many people that use depth sensor, they use the skeletal model. We didn't do that because skeletal model is sensitive to occlusions. And also the idea is that with a new deep learning methodology, it does not make any sense to make a skeletal model for gait and fall detection. So the key idea is to identify the foreground and the background, as you see here, and as you then you project this into 3D, and segment the foreground out. You detect where the floor is, because that's going to be important for fall detection, And note also that actually it's pretty privacy protected. So you don't see any skin here. You can barely see the person. So you cannot identify anything. So we compute walking speed, height of the person, stride time, stride length, this kind of measures. How do we compute them? We have multiple methodologies. One is to actually track the center of gravity of the foreground of the object, and then another one is actually to track the steps, so where the object touches the floor. So you get this kind of measurement. And the key part of this that we actually have a lab with this Vicon motion capture system, which is a must-have if you want to develop your own algorithms for gait and fall detection. So this is a expensive piece of equipment, but has millimeter accuracy, so you can actually see if a less precise instrument like a depth camera can actually extract what you need. So well, there are challenges with this. So a Kinect, as I said, is going to be in the living room, kind of on the long axis. So this is the entry, and the room goes to my left. And one of the problems with this is actually resident identification, because that obviously, as you have visitors, they actually gonna. So this, what you see here, there are like walks, uh, multiple walks a day. So basically, with the Kinect, what the idea is that you actually look at the walk. A walk has to be more than 2 or 3 meters. So you don't have to get every walk. You can wait for a good walk. So measuring gait 20 times a day is frequent enough. So these are basically, each dot is a walk, and you see there is a certain speed and a certain height for a walk. So basically, this is how we differentiate. If we know the height of the person, of the resident, then we can tell, oh, this is the resident, this is his height, and hence this is his Gaussian. So obviously, how we actually do this Gaussian cloud to identify the resident is a more complex problem. But yeah, we have this and you can argue, yeah, if you would have a Fitbit, this one wouldn't be such a hard problem. But again, we didn't use any wearable. We actually use wearables in later projects, because we actually had more. We went down in age to more independent living and to younger population, like around 60. So this is what you see if you follow somebody across time. There is a decrease in walking speed, and you have basically several windows, like a window, a 2 weeks window, which 2 weeks window, I have to tell you, is sort of a magical parameter that came up in our review of the data. So apparently, in the 2 weeks, you could actually find changes in behavior and that are linked to clinical conditions. So you will see later, when we actually do our algorithm, they basically use a Gaussian in the last 2 weeks for a parameter to decide if the today measurement is normal or abnormal. But that's what you get. So it's pretty informative to see somebody's speed going down. As opposed to this, the person goes to the clinical assessment, and they only do that once every 3 months or so. So this is okay. So next is actually the next important thing for elderly is fall detection. So this what the nurses told us: you need to have a good fall, reliable fall detector. So this is what this thing would work. So you can see here the floor is blue, the foreground is yellow. So the image processing did that for us from the depth image, and now the person is falling, and so actually this is like so now if you see that the chair was colored in green, which should have been the residence. So there are things that actually don't go perfect. And I said pets actually is one of the problems. Like if we had cats that jump from the bed to the floor, and then they trigger the alarms. But again, the deep learning is getting better right now. So I mean, we latest version we use deep learning, so we basically solved this problem. So these are like things that we did a few years ago. Okay, so then when you detect an alert, you actually send an alert to the nurse, the people that are concerned, nursing personnel, with a video, and so they can review. So if it's a false alarm, so we have this thing with review and rewind. So we have a few papers about this. So to deal with the false alarms, you actually send the clip of the fall, and the person can decide, well, that's a false alarm. So yeah, you have a rewind, you can see. And the cool part about rewinding is that you can actually see the cause of the fall, and you can see how the people fall. So if this person needs to go to the ER, at least you know if they hit their head, or so you know what to do next. So I had actually orthopedic surgeon telling me, one, this is very important because I need to know how the person felt to actually be more to act more rapidly. So another thing that is, I think this is a cool thing to do. You could use the sensor data to actually proxy stuff. So in our case, we have to proxy the fall risk. So because it's one thing to detect a fall, but another thing to actually say, well, this guy is a risk for fall. The way you do this in real life, the person has assessment every 6 months, and they say they do this tag, time up and go, and say, well, if your tag is over 30, then you are in trouble. But we did actually this proxying, which is, was a simple, the only thing is to have the data, but you have an input, the sensor data, and you have the output is the tag score. And we were able to proxy it, and we proved that actually was pretty good. And this is what you get actually. You get a interface, and this is the bad part, the alert part. This is the okay part, and this is the normal part. So here, this person, the tag is going over 30 seconds, which is of concern, and and you can see here the flow risk is still increasing, and here we had an alert. So this is useful for actually, preventing falls. So you can do some programs and see if your fall risk is decreasing. And I think this is a great thing to actually see if your fall risk program, fall risk reduction program works. Okay, so now we experiment with other modalities because of the shortfall, the problems that connect the depth sensor had. And our theory is that the more sensors you have, the more you actually can have a good prediction. So radar, Doppler radar, why is radar? It's inexpensive, works in the bathroom better than, I mean, still a dead camera in the bathroom is not really, you could tell somebody is on the toilet, but works with occlusions, and it is exactly like they clock you when they check the speed is it detects the shifting frequency as the object approaches the sensor. So we had again our credo. We need to use inexpensive sensors. So this is a GE radar that they actually use, like you saw me earlier to turn my light on. And we mounted it on the ground because we initially wanted to measure gait, And the gate actually is difficult because the radar actually works by only on the toward and away motion. So if you go transversal or oblique, it is not working that well. Um, well, we and um, for falls, it actually should be deployed on the ceiling since you have the fall is going away from the radar. So does it work? Well, we put it in a few apartments. It worked for some, it didn't work for some. And what I want to show you here is that we didn't do the regular uh, sensitivity, specificity, or detection versus false alarms. Because the problem is in real life, you don't know how many false alarms you want. You would have. If you do if you do the experiment in the lab, you do know because you have five false and five non-false. Whereas in real life, if you put this thing, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. So the correct way to do it in real life is to measure the number of false alarms per hour. So obviously, if you have here if you are in this range where you have once a day, it's not too bad. But if you are in this range where you have for an hour, it's not really that great. Now we use sound. Why would you use sound? Because again, works in multiple rooms, works during the night, is cheap. Obviously has a problem if you call it microphone as opposed to sound sensor. And but we dealt with that. We didn't store that. We actually processed the sound on the board, so nothing was just an alarm send. Nothing was sent from that sensor. No signal was sent, but for not for. And the key point of working is actually the fact that we use microphone arrays and together with beamforming. So this is somewhat a heavy signal processing technique. But the idea is that you can actually focus the array, and you can tell where the sound is coming from. So you could say something like, "Oh, the sound is coming from above. I don't care. It should come from the floor." To actually think is a fall. This is kind of similar with the Wi-Fi mesh networks. So I just installed a mesh network in my house the other day. So you could actually have signal everywhere, uh, but we couldn't make it to work. So some people claim they did it, in MIT and in University of Washington, what you couldn't do it. So how did we do it? Well, that's kind of the implementation of the original one. It was a circular microphone array with a half a meter radius, and the actually that was the original one. Then apparently Kinect has a microphone array in it. It has 4 microphones, so we use that. Um, does it work? Well, it worked. It actually worked a little bit of reducing the false alarm of the Kinect. So that's what we are showing here. And here that was in the lab, so you see the false alarm rate. It was not in the Tiger place. We tried to put this in Tiger place, and I think we got some measurement, but we never processed that data. Another idea of a open array is motion sensor array. So the good part about this, the idea would have been to install it it's called Vampire. Well, that was my vertical array of multiple peers. So it was good. It would been good it was designed for the bathroom. So there are many floors in the bathroom. So you still need something cheap and that would work reliably, like in the shower, for example. But we didn't get to manufacture this one. Okay, another big direction in our sensor suite is actually sleep evaluation. So we develop our own BCG sensor that goes under the mattress, and BCG is the mechanical motion of the heart together with the blood that is pushed to the vasculature. It has more peaks than the ECG, where ECG has this R peak pretty prominent. Here we have a J peak, but there are also big peaks due to the valve closure and the reflection of the blood in the vasculature. So, and again, why did we do that? Because we need to develop our own algorithms. And that's a little bit of detail about how we find the J peak. It's a little more complicated than finding the R peak in the ECG. And also so the idea is the interesting part about this signal is that is a nice signal processing problem. So see here, you have the respiration wave, and the small thing is the heart rate wave. So it's a nice decoupling of we extract the heart rate first, the respiration first, and then we extract the heart rate. And we developed several algorithms for that. I'm not getting into the details here. Well, the interesting part that is actually we're working in right now. So is to actually compute to use the BCG to compute the blood pressure. Well, the question is, what would you do if you know your blood pressure every second? And I'm telling you, it's gonna be unsettling. And neither the physicians actually don't know exactly what they would do because they never seen any. So another thing, a note here is that you could do a similar, you can extract a similar signal to the BCG, which is ballistocardiogram, which is called SCG, seismocardiogram, that if you use a 3D accelerometer. And again, that's why we use our own accelerometers, because I can extract raw signal. Other than that, you can use your smartwatch and phones. They do have accelerometers. And I believe you could actually get it from the phone. I'm not sure if you can get it from smartwatch. I think from the smartwatch you get whatever Apple or Google give you. And also another thing for the ballistocardiogram sensor is that you can compute the sleep stages. This is a big thing, maybe mainly for people with that could be indicative of pain or dementia, and actually we got pretty good result with deep learning. So you see we are in the few percentage from the ground truth RAM to the predicted RAM. And also we measure bed restlessness. So also this is an indicative of pain and dementia. And again, if you don't know the context, it's hard to tell why the person is restless. But if you know they have they are in pain, or they have a pain, some chronic pain, or they start to have dementia, then you could actually assess the dementia progress looking at the bed restlessness and REM. Now, motion sensors are used to quantify the activity. So we use various sensors mounted in the room in the apartment. It's good that you can put one in the bathroom, for example, to see the bathroom visits. But again, there are no new technologies right now like 3D radars, and actually using the Kinect camera to assess the depth camera to assess the motion. So if you could if you had a bath sensor, that's how you would have every time the person enter in the bathroom. So if you see many entrances during the night, you say, hey, that might be a problem. So again, we'll use this simple Gaussian over 2 weeks. So we compute the mean of the hits, and you say, hey, if in this day you got more than some standard deviation from the mean, then that might be a problem. How we send it, we send a letter saying increasing bathroom visits. And it's cool when we actually design the first design of this thing to actually have some clinical feedback. The clinicians could submit feedback saying, oh yeah, that's right, this guy, I know he had a UTI last week or this week. Again, that's another way. If you look at the motion sensors during the day, The blacks say denotes the out of the apartment. So we have a sensor on the door saying that the guy is in and out. And the other things are number of sensors, number of hits per hour. So the darker the color, the more hits. And you can see this guy was going out, like 3 times a day, pretty constantly. And at one point, he started to have some dementia and depression. I mean, said depression because of some death in family. And then he didn't go out, and then he went out again after they did an intervention. So motion detectors are good. The problem is that they're a pain to install and change the batteries, and that's why we try to get rid of them and proxy them somehow with other devices. Another thing is, as I mentioned, we use like this telehealth Townsville set that had pulse ox scale and blood pressure, and they had a glucose meter optional. I didn't try that. Also had a phone modem where people would be asked every day, how do you feel today? What. So to actually get again to try to get some ground truth for our sensor data. It failed because, as I said, it is not uh, good for people that are not cognitively intact, and a person fell off the scale. Uh, all the blood pressures were bad because they didn't know how to put a cuff. So the nurses said, "Stop here. I cannot deal with this." Now, wait. As I said, as Karen mentioned, this has to be aided by machine learning algorithms, and I'll give you some ideas. So, for example, that Gaussian idea, you actually look at the normal days, you model with some mixture of Gaussians, and then if you have outliers from that you would call those uh, uh, unusual events. You send you will send at this point you know what it is. You just say it's an abnormal behavior, so you want to check on the resident. Another thing that we did a streaming clustering, which is taking measurements as you go, and you form the clusters as you go, and you can tell if a cluster is actually emerging, that means the state is the state of the person is changing. This is an interesting. So if this looks good to you, you should probably look more in the streaming clustering idea. And I have a paper citation here. Now, what we realized that nurses do not actually die for graphs. So we actually try to transform data to text. So to make a summary of the data. So now actually this is pretty easy with the new language model that came. In the old times, it wasn't that easy. But so this is a simple alert where we basically just summarize the numerical data to text. Here we try to actually add, for example, more information saying that there are many instances with low pulse rate, many instances with low respiration rate. So it gives a little bit more information than just there were some alerts. Another thing that we try with, and that's one of my projects, was to actually link the sensor data to the clinical notes, because as I said, we had point declare, we have access to the clinical notes. So the idea is we parse the notes using and NLP, like MetaMap. We extracted the sign of symptoms, the drugs, and these relevant parts from the notes, and we link them to we attach them with to the sensor data using this guilt by association approach, saying that if the person had this problem last week and he had this sensor pattern, if this sensor pattern repeats, then he might have the same problem like last week. Obviously, this depends on the history. If the person has the first time a problem, the only thing you can say is like, I've never seen this problem, that there is something wrong with the guy. But I think this is this should be the future of using sensor for health. If you do not connect it to a EMR, I don't think we can go too much further. So another way that is where the result of the OLED would be. So you would say, aside of the summarizing the data, nighttime bathroom activity was lower, nighttime overall activity, whatever you say, this pattern was associated with leg pain and fall and redness. So that means the leg was probably red. So this was inferred based on the previous pattern that was the sensor pattern was similar to. This is what we try to actually give the information to the older adults and to the family, and this is how the interface would look. So the interface would look, and it was through Alexa. You could ask Alexa, tell me how did I sleep last night, or tell me how my mother slept last night, and you'll see the sleeping quality, the sleep quality, and the red zone, and so this person slept okay, and this person had the follies that were starting to grow in this area, and so that will be the interface for the family, and I was telling you that basically when we gave that to the elderly, only the guys that have a pretty strong science background that they're kind of curious about this, but all the other guys, they didn't actually look at this. So some comments about the machine learning sensor processing. Using data across patients is challenging because many of this information is a lot of this information is behavioral. Deep learning has significantly improved the processing of imaging and depth. So I think it's going to be some progress that we will make, more progress that is going to come. And there is a lot of room for exploring because of this too. And also is the idea with that the idea of mapping sensor to health data or to other sensor could be actually maybe improved by transformers. So I think transformers are really going to make a difference. Remember the idea of proxying the fall risk. So mapping the sensor data to fall risk. We probably right now the transformer that should be easy to do. So that was it.
Thank you very, very much, Mihail, for excellent and wonderful, informative paper and talk. So we got a few minutes for questioning, and then